stumbling along the dark roadside, her Valentino gown torn at the hem, blood trickling from her temple where her ex Marcus had slammed her head against the marble counter. The world spun. Headlights blazed behind her, and her heart seized in her chest. Had he followed? But the black Bentley slowed beside her, and a man's voice cut through her panic like steel wrapped in velvet. "Get in the car, now, before I handle this my way." Christine's breath came in short gasps as she turned toward the voice. Through the tinted window being lowered, she could make out strong features, dark hair silvering at the temples, and eyes that held something she hadn't seen directed at her in years. Concern. Real concern, not the manufactured kind Marcus used to manipulate her. "I said get in." The command was softer this time, but no less absolute. "You're bleeding, and whoever did this to you might come back." That decided it. Christine's hand was on the door handle before her rational mind could catalog all the reasons getting into a stranger's car was dangerous. But what was more dangerous? This unknown man, or Marcus, hunting her down after what she'd just done. She slid into the leather seat, and the door closed with a solid, expensive thunk. The man was already pulling back onto the road, his jaw set in a hard line as he glanced at her in the dim interior light. "Hospital or police?" His voice was controlled, but Christine could hear the rage simmering underneath. Not at her. For her. Neither. Her voice came out hoarse. "Please, just not there." He was quiet for a long moment, and she could feel him assessing her, the torn designer gown, the blood matting her carefully styled hair, the way she'd instinctively pressed herself against the passenger door as far from him as possible. "Okay." He reached slowly into the center console, giving her time to see what he was doing, and pulled out a pristine handkerchief. "For your head. Press it against the wound." Christine took it with shaking hands, the monogram catching what little light filtered through from the dashboard. K.H. She pressed the soft fabric to her temple and felt the sting of split skin. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet." He kept his eyes on the road, but his hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I'm trying very hard not to turn this car around and find whoever did this to you." Something about the quiet fury in his voice made her feel safer than she had in years. This wasn't the explosive rage she'd learned to fear. This was controlled, protective, meant for someone else. "My ex-boyfriend," she heard herself say. "We were at a charity gala and I smiled at another man during the silent auction. He, Marcus, didn't like that." The muscle in his jaw jumped. "Where can I take you? Family? Friends?" Christine's laugh was bitter. "All our friends are his friends. My family's in Atlanta and I can't—" She couldn't call them, couldn't admit that brilliant Christine Howard, the girl who'd gotten into Harvard Law at 21, who'd made partner at 35, had let herself become this. "My place, then." He said it like it was decided. "I have guest rooms, door locks from the inside. You have my word you're safe." She should say no, should insist he drop her at a hotel, but her purse was back at the venue, her phone dead after Marcus had grabbed it from her hands and thrown it across the room. And she was so tired of being strong, of having all the right answers. "Okay," she whispered. He nodded once and changed lanes, heading toward the part of the city where buildings scraped the sky and only people with surnames for first names could afford to live. They drove in silence for several minutes, the only sound the gentle hum of the engine and Christine's attempts to control her breathing. She studied him from the corner of her eye. Late 40s, she guessed. Expensive suit, even more expensive car. Wedding ring absent, but a pale band on his left ring finger suggested one had lived there recently. "I'm Kevin," he said quietly, as if reading her need to know who she'd trusted with her life. "Kevin Harris." Christine's head snapped toward him, ignoring the way the movement made her wound throb. Kevin Harris. Everyone in the legal world knew that name. Tech billionaire, philanthropist, the man who'd built an empire from a college dorm room and revolutionized cloud computing. "I know who you are," she said. "Then you know I'm not going to hurt you, and you know I have enough resources to make sure no one else does either." It should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded like a promise. "Christine," she offered. "Christine Howard." Something flickered across his face. Recognition. You're the Christine Howard who argued the Patterson case last year, employment discrimination? Despite everything, she felt a flutter of pride. You followed that? I followed you. Your closing argument was brilliant. I sent it to my entire legal team as an example of how to build an airtight case. He glanced at her and she saw something like anger flash in his eyes again. That man tonight is a fool, on multiple levels. The compliment settled over her like a warm blanket, and Christine felt tears prick her eyes. When was the last time Marcus had praised her work, celebrated her victories? He'd been too busy resenting her success, finding ways to diminish it, to make her feel like her achievements meant nothing compared to his own stalled career in finance. The Bentley pulled into an underground garage, and Kevin guided it into a spot near a private elevator. He came around to her side and opened the door, offering his hand but not insisting she take it. Christine accepted it, her legs shaky as she stood. The adrenaline was wearing off, and everything hurt. Her head, her wrists where Marcus had grabbed her, her heart. Kevin kept a respectful distance as they entered the elevator, using a key card to access the penthouse level. The ride up was smooth and silent, and Christine tried not to think about how her life had led her here. Standing in a billionaire's private elevator, bleeding through borrowed handkerchief, running from a man she'd once thought she loved. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse, and Christine's breath caught despite herself. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city lights stretching endlessly in all directions. The space was modern but warm, all clean lines and carefully chosen art. It looked like a home, not just a showpiece. Guest suite is this way. Kevin led her down a hallway, his hand hovering near her elbow but not touching. He opened a door to reveal a beautiful bedroom with its own sitting area, and what she glimpsed was a marble bathroom beyond. Everything you need should be in there, towels, toiletries. I'll find you something to wear. Christine stepped inside, her heels sinking into plush carpet. The room was bigger than her entire first apartment out of law school. Kevin, she turned back to him, this stranger who'd saved her. Why are you doing this? His expression softened, and for a moment she saw past the billionaire facade to the man underneath. Because 4 years ago my wife died in my arms, and I spent months afterward wishing someone, anyone, had been able to save her. I couldn't save Caroline, but I can help you. The raw honesty in his voice made Christine's throat tight. I'm sorry. About your wife. So am I. He cleared his throat, the vulnerability shuddering behind control again. I'll get that first aid kit. That wound needs to be cleaned properly. He left before she could respond, and Christine stood in the middle of the guest suite, her reflection staring back at her from a mirror over the dresser. She barely recognized herself. Her carefully styled updo had come loose, curls falling around her face. Her makeup was smeared, mascara tracking down her cheeks. The blood had dried in a dark line from her temple to her jaw. She looked like a woman who'd survived something. Maybe for the first time in 5 years, that was exactly what she was. Christine moved into the bathroom and started the shower, letting the water heat while she carefully removed the ruined gown. She stepped under the spray and finally let herself cry. Great heaving sobs that she muffled with her hand, washing away blood and tears and 5 years of slowly losing herself. When she emerged 20 minutes later, wrapped in the plushest towel she'd ever felt, she found clothes laid neatly on the bed. A soft t-shirt that would be enormous on her, clean sweatpants with a drawstring, and even unopened packages of women's underwear and socks. Christine dressed quickly, touched by the thoughtfulness. The man had everything she could need, prepared for any contingency. It spoke to a level of control that should have worried her, but instead felt comforting. Kevin Harris was a man who solved problems. A soft knock on the door made her tense. Christine? It's Kevin. Can I come in? Yes. He entered carrying a first aid kit that looked like it belonged in an emergency room, along with a glass of water and 2 pills in his other hand. Ibuprofen, for the pain. Thank you. She took the medicine and water, swallowing obediently while he set the first aid kit on the dresser. May I? He gestured to her head wound. Christine nodded and sat on the edge of the bed. Kevin pulled over the desk chair and sat facing her, close but not crowding. He opened the first aid kit with practiced efficiency and pulled on a pair of latex gloves. I'm not a doctor, he said, "but I've had enough injuries on construction sites to know my way around a first aid kit." "You worked construction?" "Before Harris Technologies, I spent summers framing houses to pay for college. Fell off more roofs than I care to admit." He carefully pushed her damp curls away from the wound, his touch impossibly gentle. "This needs cleaning. It's going to sting." Christine braced herself, but when the antiseptic touched her skin, Kevin's free hand came up to cup her jaw, his thumb stroking soothingly along her cheekbone. The gesture was so tender, so unexpected, that she forgot to flinch from the pain. "You're doing great," he murmured, focused on his work. "It's not as bad as it looked. Head wounds bleed a lot. I don't think you need stitches, but I want you to watch for signs of concussion, dizziness, nausea, confusion." "I'm a lawyer. I'm always confused," Christine tried to joke. Kevin's lips quirked. "There's that Howard wit. I was worried you'd lost it." He applied butterfly bandages with careful precision, his face inches from hers as he worked. Christine found herself studying him up close, the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair at his temples, the barely visible scar along his jaw. He was handsome in a lived-in way, a man who'd earned every year and wore them well. "There." Kevin sat back, his hand still cupping her face as he examined his work. Their eyes met, and Christine felt something shift in the air between them, something electric and terrifying and completely inappropriate given that she'd fled her abusive ex-boyfriend less than 2 hours ago. But Kevin seemed to feel it too, because his thumb traced along her jawline one more time before he pulled away, clearing his throat. "You should rest. Tomorrow we can figure out next steps." "Next steps," Christine repeated numbly. God, there were so many next steps. Police report, restraining order, finding somewhere to live since Marcus had a key to her apartment, explaining to her partners why she needed time off, facing the shame of admitting what she'd allowed to happen. "Hey," Kevin's voice pulled her back from the spiral. "One thing at a time. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow we make plans. You're not alone in this. You don't even know me. I know you're brilliant. I know you're brave enough to walk away from someone who hurt you. I know you deserve better than whatever that asshole put you through." His intensity made her breath catch. "That's enough for now." Christine nodded, not trusting her voice. Kevin stood and moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the frame. "I'm down the hall, last door on the left. If you need anything, and I mean anything, come get me. The house is secure, top of the line system. No one can get in without me knowing." "Okay." "Christine." He waited until she looked at him. "You're safe now, I promise." Then he was gone, closing the door softly behind him. Christine sat on the edge of the bed for a long moment, processing everything that had happened. This morning she'd woken up in Marcus's bed, already dreading the charity gala tonight because she knew he'd find something to criticize about her appearance or behavior. She'd put on her armor, designer gown, perfect hair, practiced smile, and prepared to survive another evening of his subtle put-downs and controlling glances. She hadn't planned to fight back when he'd cornered her in the coat room and hissed accusations about her flirting with a potential client. Hadn't planned to finally say the words that had been building in her throat for years. "I'm done. We're over." She definitely hadn't planned for his hand to shoot out and grab her wrist, yanking her close while his other hand fisted in her carefully styled hair. Hadn't planned for the marble counter her head had connected with when he shoved her away in fury. But she'd planned her escape. While Marcus had stood there shocked at his own violence, Christine had grabbed her coat and run, not even thinking about her purse or phone or anything except getting away before he came to his senses and tried to convince her it was her fault. Now, here she was, in a billionaire's guest room, wearing his clothes, her head bandaged by his gentle hands. It felt surreal, impossible, like she'd stumbled into someone else's life, but the dull throb in her temple and the ache in her wrists reminded her this was real. All of it. Christine crawled under the covers, the sheets like silk against her clean skin. The pillow cradled her aching head, and despite everything, exhaustion pulled at her. She should be afraid, staying in a strange man's house, should be planning her next move, cataloging everything she needed to do. Instead, for the first time in years, Christine felt safe enough to sleep. Morning light filtered through gauzy curtains, and Christine woke disoriented. The room was too large, the bed too comfortable, the silence too complete. Then, memory crashed back, and she sat up quickly, her head protesting the sudden movement. She was still in Kevin Harris's penthouse, still wearing his clothes, still running from Marcus. Christine's phone was dead, probably destroyed when Marcus threw it. She had no idea what time it was, what Marcus had told people at the gala after she left, whether he was looking for her. Her chest tightened with familiar anxiety. A soft knock on the door made her jump. "Christine, I have coffee if you're awake." Kevin's voice. Right. She was safe here. "Come in." He entered carrying a tray with 2 mugs and what looked like fresh pastries. He'd showered and changed into dark jeans and a fitted Henley that did nothing to hide the breadth of his shoulders. His hair was still damp, and he looked younger than he had last night, less like the intimidating billionaire and more like just a man bringing breakfast to a guest. "How's your head?" He set the tray on the dresser and handed her one of the mugs. "Better, thank you." Christine wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, breathing in the rich scent. "You didn't have to do all this." "I wanted to." Kevin settled into the chair he'd used last night, keeping that careful distance. "I have a proposition for you." Christine's lawyer instincts activated immediately. "What kind of proposition?" "The kind where you let me help you." He took a sip of his coffee, his gray eyes steady on hers. "I know you don't know me, and I know your instinct is probably to handle this yourself. But Christine, I have resources. A team of lawyers who specialize in domestic violence cases, security personnel, safe houses if you need them. Let me help." Pride warred with desperation in her chest. "I can't afford. I'm not asking you to pay me back. Consider it pro bono work that my legal team needs the practice on." His slight smile softened the lie they both knew it was. "Or let me be completely honest. I can't stop thinking about the fact that you were walking along that road bleeding, and if I hadn't been driving by, I don't know what would have happened. Let me finish what I started. Let me make sure you're actually safe, not just safe for one night." Christine studied him, trying to understand his angle. In her experience, no one helped without wanting something in return. But Kevin's expression was open, sincere in a way that made her want to trust him despite every self-protective instinct screaming warnings. "Why?" she finally asked. "The real reason." Kevin was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee like it held answers. When he spoke, his voice was rough with old pain. "Caroline's cancer diagnosis came late because she'd been ignoring symptoms for months. She didn't want to worry me while I was in the middle of a major acquisition. By the time she finally told me, it had already spread." He looked up, and Christine saw the guilt still haunting him. "I spent 4 years wishing I could go back and pay better attention, be the kind of husband who noticed when something was wrong. I can't save Caroline. But I saw you last night, and every instinct I have says you need help, even if you're too proud or too scared to ask for it. So let me help. Please." The raw honesty in his words cracked something open in Christine's chest. This wasn't about him wanting something from her. This was about him needing to do something good, to save someone when he couldn't save the person who mattered most. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Okay, I'll let you help." Relief flooded Kevin's features. "Thank you. But I need you to understand something." Christine set down her coffee and looked him straight in the eye. "I spent 5 years with someone who slowly took away my autonomy, who made decisions for me disguised as knowing what's best. I need to be part of the decisions about my own life. Can you do that?" "Yes." No hesitation. "I can do that." "Then tell me what the next steps are, all of them." Kevin pulled out his phone and opened what looked like a detailed list. Of course, he'd already made a plan. "First, we get you a new phone and secure number. Second, I have a lawyer, Tracy Anderson, who's a specialist in restraining orders and domestic violence cases. She can meet us today if you're ready. Third, we assess what you need from your apartment, and either I send my security team to get it, or we go together with protection. Fourth—" "Wait," Christine held up a hand. "Go together? You'd come with me." "If you want me to, or I can send my team alone. Your call." The fact that he gave her the choice mattered more than the offer itself. "I need to think about all of this." "Of course." Kevin set his phone aside. "There's no rush." "Well, there is for the restraining order, but everything else can wait until you're ready." Christine nodded, her mind already cataloging logistics. I need to call my office. Let them know I'm taking a few days, and I should contact the police, file a report about last night. Tracy can help coordinate with the police. It's better to have legal representation from the start. Kevin stood. I have a few calls this morning I can't avoid, but I'll be in my office down the hall if you need anything. There's food in the kitchen. Help yourself. The door code is 6284 if you want to go out, but I'd recommend staying in today until we have a security plan. The casual mention of a door code, trusting her with access to his home, struck Christine as significant. He wasn't locking her in. He was giving her the key to leave whenever she wanted. Kevin? She waited until he paused at the door. Thank you, really. His smile was gentle. We're just getting started, Christine. Don't thank me yet. The next several hours passed in a blur of phone calls and planning. Tracy Anderson arrived at noon, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who took one look at Christine's bandaged head and immediately shifted into protective mode. We're filing for an emergency restraining order today, Tracy announced, settling at Kevin's dining table with a laptop and stack of legal folders. I've already drafted the paperwork. I just need you to walk me through what happened last night and any prior incidents of abuse. Christine's throat tightened. Prior incidents? Marcus Holloway has a pattern of behavior, I'm guessing. Lasty, night wasn't the first time he hurt you, was it? Shame flooded through Christine, hot and acidic. Tracy must have seen it on her face because her expression softened. Christine, I've been doing this for 20 years. There's no judgment here, only facts. We need to establish a pattern of escalating violence. Kevin, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner of his own living room, stood abruptly. I need to make a call. I'll be in my office if you need me. He left before Christine could respond, and she realized he was giving them privacy, letting her talk without a man in the room, even though it was his house, his lawyer, his dime paying for all of this. Tracy waited until the office door closed. He's one of the good ones, rare, but they exist. I barely know him. Sometimes the people who help us most are the ones we least expect. Tracy opened her laptop. Now, tell me about Marcus. Start from the beginning. So Christine did. She talked about how Marcus had been charming during their first 6 months together, attentive and affectionate, how he'd slowly isolated her from friends, always with reasonable excuses about why they couldn't make it to gatherings, how he'd started commenting on her appearance, her work, her choices, framing it as concern. She described the first time he'd grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise, how he'd apologized with tears in his eyes and blamed work stress, the way criticism became constant, how he'd started controlling her schedule, her clothes, who she spent time with, the escalation to pushing, to shoving, to last night's explosion of violence. By the time Christine finished, her coffee had gone cold, and Tracy had filled pages with notes. This is solid, Tracy said. More than enough for an emergency restraining order. I'm going to need photos of your injuries, medical documentation if possible. I didn't go to the hospital. Kevin mentioned he treated the wound. Did he document it? As if summoned, Kevin's office door opened. I took photos last night. For evidence purposes. They're on my phone if you need them. He'd been listening, Christine realized, making sure she was okay even while giving her space. Tracy nodded approvingly. Send those to me. Christine, I'm filing this electronically within the hour. We should have a hearing scheduled within the next few days, but the emergency order will be in effect immediately. That fast? When there's documented violence and witness testimony? Yes. Tracy started packing up her materials. I'm also going to recommend you have security for the next few weeks. Marcus will be served with the restraining order, and some men, they don't take kindly to losing control. Fear spiked through Christine. You think he'll come after me? I think we plan for the worst and hope for the best. Tracy's gaze was kind but firm. Kevin mentioned he has a security team. Use them. After Tracy left, Christine found Kevin in his office, staring at his computer screen without really seeing it. She knocked on the doorframe, and he looked up, concern immediate in his eyes. How are you holding up? I don't know yet. Christine stepped inside, taking in the sleek space lined with bookshelves and tech equipment. Tracy said you took photos last night. I hope that was okay. I know I should have asked, but you were exhausted, and I thought, He trailed off. It was smart, thank you. Christine moved closer to his desk. Kevin, this is a lot. The lawyer, the security team, letting me stay here. I need to know what you want from me. He stood slowly, coming around the desk but maintaining distance. I want you to be safe. That's all. People don't just do things for nothing. Most people don't. Kevin's gaze held hers. But I'm not most people, and this isn't nothing. Caroline used to volunteer at a women's shelter. Did I mention that? She'd come home with stories about brilliant, capable women who'd been beaten down by men who should have protected them. It broke her heart every single time. His voice roughened. On her worst days, when the cancer was taking everything from her, she made me promise I'd keep supporting that shelter, keep helping women get free. Last night, when I saw you on that road, all I could think was that Caroline would never forgive me if I didn't stop. Understanding settled over Christine like a weight. You're doing this for her. I'm doing this for you, Kevin corrected gently. But yeah, I'm doing it because of her too, because she taught me that when you have resources, you use them to help people. Simple as that. Christine felt tears prick her eyes. I'm going to pay you back, somehow. You really don't have to. I really do. She tried for a smile. I'm a lawyer. I understand contract law. If you won't let me pay you back financially, then I'll find another way. Maybe I'll represent your company pro bono for the next decade. Kevin's laugh was surprised and genuine. Deal. But only if you actually want to work with Harris Technologies. Who wouldn't want you as a client? You'd be surprised. I'm apparently very demanding. But his eyes were warm, and Christine felt something ease in her chest. The rest of the day passed in careful domesticity. Kevin worked while Christine processed everything with Tracy over phone calls. They ordered dinner from a Thai place that Kevin promised made the best curry in the city, and they ate at his dining table while the city lights sparkled below them. Tell me about Harris Technologies, Christine said, trying to focus on something other than her own drama. How did you go from construction sites to cloud computing? Kevin's face lit up, and for the next hour he told her about building his first server in his college apartment, about the early days of scraping together funding, about the risks that paid off and the failures that taught him more than success ever could. Christine found herself leaning forward, genuinely fascinated. This wasn't the billionaire everyone read about in Forbes. This was someone who'd worked for everything he had, who'd failed and gotten back up, who'd lost the love of his life, and somehow kept going. What about you? Kevin asked as they finished eating. Harvard Law, partner at 35. That's not a path for people who aren't absolutely brilliant. Or absolutely stubborn. Christine smiled wryly. My dad was a mechanic. My mom cleaned houses. They saved every penny to make sure I could go to college. Failure wasn't an option. That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of love, Christine corrected. They believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. Do they know about Marcus? The question landed like a stone in still water. No, I couldn't. They worked so hard to give me opportunities. How do I tell them I wasted all of that on a man who... Her voice cracked. Kevin reached across the table, his hand covering hers. You didn't waste anything. You survived. That's not weakness, Christine. That's strength. His hand was warm and solid, and Christine found herself turning her palm up, threading her fingers through his. It was the first time she'd initiated touch, and Kevin's slight intake of breath told her he noticed. They sat like that for a long moment, hands linked across the table, before Christine pulled away reluctantly. I should get some sleep. Tracy wants to meet early tomorrow to prep for the hearing. Of course. Kevin stood, gathering plates. Christine? She paused at the entrance to the hallway. I'm glad you're here. I know the circumstances are terrible, but I'm glad you're safe. Christine's heart did something complicated in her chest. Me too. The next 2 days followed a similar pattern. Meetings with Tracy, phone calls with the police, careful avoidance of anything related to Marcus while Christine waited for the restraining order hearing. Kevin worked from home, always nearby but never hovering, giving her space while making sure she knew she wasn't alone. And slowly, carefully, they fell into a rhythm. Morning coffee together before Tracy arrived, lunch at Kevin's dining table while he told her about his latest project and she explained complex legal theories. Dinner cooked together in his massive kitchen, Kevin teaching her his construction worker's simple approach to cooking while she teased him about his expensive appliances. They didn't talk about what was happening between them, the way Kevin's hand would linger on her back when he guided her through a doorway, how Christine caught herself watching him work, admiring the focus on his face, the charged moments when their eyes would meet and hold just a beat too long. It was too soon, Christine told herself. She'd just left an abusive relationship. She was vulnerable and traumatized and had no business feeling attraction to anyone, let alone the man who'd saved her and was quite literally keeping her safe. But her body didn't seem to care about logic. Every time Kevin smiled at her, something warm bloomed in her chest. When his hand brushed hers passing the salt at dinner, her skin tingled. And late at night, lying in the guest bed, she found herself thinking about the strong line of his shoulders, the gentle way he touched her injured head, the barely controlled fury in his voice when he talked about Marcus. On the third morning, Christine woke to her phone buzzing with a text from Tracy. Hearing today at 2 p.m., emergency order already in effect. Marcus has been served. Be ready for him to show up with a lawyer trying to make you look unstable. Christine's stomach dropped. Of course Marcus would fight this. He was probably already spinning a story about her being the unstable one, about how last night was a misunderstanding, about how she was overreacting. She found Kevin in the kitchen, already dressed in a dark suit that made him look every inch the powerful CEO. He took one look at her face and set down his coffee. What happened? Hearing is today. Marcus has been served with the emergency order. Christine's hands shook slightly. What if he convinces them I'm lying? What if... Hey! Kevin crossed to her in 2 strides, his hands coming up to frame her face with that same gentle touch he'd used the first night. You're not lying. You have photos, medical evidence, and my testimony that I picked you up bleeding on the side of the road. Tracy knows what she's doing. Christine nodded, but the fear didn't ease. I'm going to have to see him, in court. Not alone. I'll be there. Kevin, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. His thumbs brushed along her cheekbones, and Christine realized she was crying. Let me be there. Please. She leaned into his touch without thinking, her forehead coming to rest against his chest. Kevin's arms came around her immediately, holding her securely but not tightly, always giving her room to pull away if she wanted. But she didn't want to. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Christine felt truly safe, protected not by control but by choice. Kevin wasn't holding her to trap her. He was holding her because she needed it. Thank you, she whispered against his shirt. Always. They stood like that for a long moment before Christine pulled back, wiping her eyes. I should get ready. Tracy will be here soon. Christine. Kevin waited until she looked at him. You're going to be fine. Better than fine. You're going to walk into that courtroom and show them exactly who Christine Howard is. His faith in her steadied something inside. Who is that? Someone brilliant and brave who doesn't let anyone diminish her, not even herself. The courtroom was smaller than Christine expected, windowless and fluorescent lit, with a worn quality that spoke to years of people seeking justice within its walls. Tracy had prepped her thoroughly on what to expect, but actually sitting at the plaintiff's table, knowing Marcus would walk through that door any minute, made Christine's heart race. Kevin sat in the gallery directly behind her, close enough that she could feel his presence like a shield at her back. He'd wanted to sit beside her, but Tracy had gently explained it might undermine Christine's case if opposing counsel suggested she'd immediately jumped into a new relationship. The door opened, and Marcus walked in with his lawyer, an expensive-suited shark named Emerson Price, who Tracy had warned her about. But it wasn't the lawyer that made Christine's breath catch. It was Marcus. He looked normal, handsome even, in his tailored suit with his artfully styled hair. The same man who'd charmed her at a law conference 5 years ago with his intelligence and wit, not the monster who'd slammed her head into a counter 3 days ago. That was the worst part about abuse, Christine realized. It didn't always look like violence. Sometimes it looked like love. Marcus's eyes found hers across the courtroom, and for a moment she saw pleading in them. Come back. Forgive me. You know you're overreacting. All the manipulations he'd used for years, condensed into a single look. Then, Christine felt Kevin's hand come to rest on her shoulder from behind, just for a second, a reminder that she wasn't alone, and the spell broke. All rise. Judge Williams was a black woman in her 60s who had a reputation for being fair but firm. She listened to Tracy's opening statement about the pattern of escalating abuse, the photos of Christine's injuries, Kevin's witness testimony about finding her bleeding on the roadside. Then Emerson Price stood, and Christine braced herself. "Your Honor, this is clearly a case of a relationship gone bad where Miss Howard is using the legal system to punish my client for a breakup. Yes, there was an argument at the gala. Yes, Mr. Holloway grabbed Miss Howard's wrist when she tried to storm off in a public place, which may have been inappropriate. But the head injury? My client asserts that Miss Howard was intoxicated and stumbled, hitting her head on the counter herself." The lie was so smooth, so reasonable sounding, that Christine felt sick. "Mr. Holloway is willing to stay away from Miss Howard if that's what she wants," Price continued. "But a restraining order? That affects his reputation, his career. We believe this is an overreaction to a difficult breakup." Judge Williams looked at Christine over her reading glasses. "Miss Howard, do you have anything to add?" Christine stood on shaky legs. Tracy had told her she didn't have to speak, that the evidence would speak for itself. But looking at Marcus sitting there with his lawyer, already spinning his web of lies, Christine knew she had to. "Your Honor, I'm an attorney. I've spent my career arguing cases in courtrooms far more intimidating than this one. I graduated top of my class at Harvard Law. I made partner at one of the most competitive firms in the city." Christine's voice strengthened as she spoke. "I tell you this not to brag, but to establish that I am not a woman who overreacts. I'm not a woman who makes impulsive decisions." She locked eyes with Marcus. "I spent 5 years with a man who slowly, systematically isolated me from my support system, who criticized everything I did until I started doubting my own judgment, who grabbed me, pushed me, shoved me, and told me it was my fault for provoking him. 3 nights ago, he threw me against a marble counter hard enough to split my head open because I smiled at another man." Christine's hands clenched at her sides. "I did not stumble drunk. I was fleeing a man who'd finally escalated to the level of violence I knew, deep down, had always been coming. And I refuse to minimize what happened just because it's uncomfortable to admit that someone like me, educated, successful, confident, could end up in this situation." The courtroom was silent when she sat down. Even Price looked rattled. Judge Williams reviewed the evidence for a long moment before speaking. "Mr. Holloway, I'm issuing a restraining order effective immediately for a period of 1 year. You're to stay at least 500 feet away from Miss Howard at all times. No contact via phone, email, social media, or third parties. Violation will result in immediate arrest." She banged her gavel. "This hearing is adjourned." Relief flooded through Christine so powerfully she felt lightheaded. Tracy squeezed her arm, whispering congratulations, and Kevin was suddenly there, having vaulted the gallery railing, his hand on her back steadying her. But across the courtroom, Marcus stood with his lawyer, and the look he gave Christine was pure rage. Not the pleading from before, not the charm he'd used to manipulate her, just cold, hard fury that someone had dared to defy him. "He'll never hurt you again," Kevin said quietly, his voice pitched only for her. "I promise you that." Christine wanted to believe him, but she'd seen that look in Marcus's eyes before, right before he'd hurt her worse than ever. This wasn't over. Not yet. They made it back to Kevin's penthouse in silence, Kevin's hand a constant presence on her back as he guided her through the parking garage and into the private elevator. Christine couldn't stop shaking, the adrenaline of seeing Marcus, of speaking her truth in court, finally catching up to her. The elevator doors closed, and Christine's carefully maintained composure shattered. A sob tore from her throat, and then Kevin's arms were around her, pulling her against his chest as she broke down completely. "I've got you," he murmured into her hair. "You're safe. I've got you." Christine clung to him, her hands fisting in his suit jacket as 5 years of suppressed fear and shame poured out of her. Kevin just held her, one hand stroking her back, the other cradling her head, murmuring reassurances until the storm passed. When the elevator reached the penthouse, Kevin guided her to the couch and settled beside her, not letting go. Christine found herself curled against him, her head on his shoulder, exhausted from crying but feeling lighter than she had in years. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't apologize. You were incredible today." Kevin's hand continued its soothing motion along her spine. "You stood up and told your truth even though it was terrifying. That took courage. I was so scared. Being scared doesn't make you weak, it makes you human." He pressed a kiss to her temple, just above the butterfly bandages. "And you did it anyway." Christine pulled back enough to look at him, and something shifted in the air between them. Kevin's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing away lingering tears. His eyes searched hers, asking a question, and Christine, who'd spent 5 years having every choice stolen from her, made one now. She kissed him. It was soft and tentative at first, barely a brush of lips. But Kevin made a low sound in his throat and kissed her back, his hands sliding into her hair as he deepened the connection. He tasted like coffee and promises, and Christine felt something inside her that had been locked away for years finally open. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kevin rested his forehead against hers. "Christine, don't," she interrupted. "Don't tell me this is too fast or I'm too vulnerable or I'm not thinking clearly. I was going to say that I've wanted to do that since the moment you climbed into my car 3 nights ago." His smile was crooked. "But you're right that we should talk about timing." "What if I don't want to talk about timing?" Christine's hands had somehow ended up on his chest, feeling his heart race under her palms. "What if I want this? Want you?" Kevin's control visibly wavered. "You just got out of a relationship where someone took choices from you. I won't be another man who pushes you into something before you're ready." "Kevin?" Christine waited until he met her eyes. "The fact that you're worried about that you're giving me space to choose, that's exactly why I want this. You're not taking anything from me. I'm offering it." His breath caught. "Are you sure? I'm sure I want to kiss you again. I'm sure I want to fall asleep in your arms instead of alone in that guest room. I'm sure that when I'm with you, I feel like myself again." Christine's voice strengthened. "I'm not asking you to marry me or even commit to forever. I'm asking you to let me have this, to let us have this." Kevin searched her face for a long moment, and whatever he saw there must have convinced him because he kissed her again. This time there was no hesitation, no holding back. His hands slid into her hair, angling her head to deepen the kiss, and Christine melted into him with a soft sound of surrender. When he pulled her into his lap, she went willingly, her legs straddling his hips as she pressed closer. Kevin's hands moved to her waist, his touch firm, but asking permission with every movement. Christine answered by pulling his shirt free from his pants, her hands finding warm skin and hard muscle underneath. "Bedroom?" Kevin's voice was rough. "Yes," but then Christine paused. "Wait, your bedroom or the guest room?" She saw him understand what she was really asking. Was this sex, or was this something more? Were they still playing pretend at boundaries, or were they acknowledging what was really happening between them? "My bedroom," Kevin said. "If you're comfortable with that." Christine answered by kissing him again, pouring every ounce of want and trust and desperate need into it. Kevin stood with her still in his arms, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her down the hall. His bedroom was huge, all floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furniture, but Christine barely registered her surroundings. Kevin laid her on the bed with such careful reverence that she felt tears prick her eyes again. "Hey!" He bracketed her with his arms, not crushing her but covering her. "We can stop any time. Just say the word." "I don't want to stop." Christine pulled him down for another kiss. "I want to feel something good, something I chose." Kevin's eyes darkened, and he kissed her with renewed intensity. His hands moved to the buttons of her blouse, and he paused on each one, giving her time to say no. When she didn't, when she helped him remove the fabric, his gaze on her exposed skin felt like worship. "You're beautiful," he murmured, his lips finding the curve of her neck. Christine arched into the touch, her hands working at his shirt buttons. When she finally got it open and pushed it off his shoulders, she paused to simply look. Kevin was solid muscle everywhere, his body showing evidence of the physical labor of his youth, combined with the discipline of someone who still made time for the gym. But it was the scars that caught her attention, a jagged line along his ribs, a twisted patch on his shoulder, evidence that he'd lived and survived and carried his own history. "From the roof falls?" she asked, tracing the shoulder scar. That one was a nail gun accident. I was 20 and thought I knew everything. His smile was self-deprecating. Turns out I knew nothing. Christine leaned forward and pressed a kiss to the scar, then to another on his collarbone. Kevin's hands tightened on her waist, his breath catching. Christine, I want this, she said again. Is that okay? Do you want this? Yes. The word was a growl. God, yes. Then they were moving together, clothes disappearing, bodies finding each other with an urgency that felt inevitable. Kevin touched her like she was precious, his hands and mouth learning what made her gasp, what made her arch, what made her whisper his name like a prayer. And Christine touched him back, reclaiming her body and her choices with every kiss, every caress. When Kevin paused, reaching for protection, asking one more time if she was sure, Christine answered by pulling him closer. I'm sure. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. The first moment of connection stole her breath, not from pain, but from the overwhelming rightness of it. Kevin held still, his forehead pressed to hers, giving her time to adjust, to accept, to choose the next movement. When Christine rolled her hips, Kevin groaned and began to move, setting a rhythm that built slowly, intensely, like a wave gathering strength. Christine lost herself in sensation, in the feeling of being with someone who touched her like she mattered, who kept whispering her name like it was sacred, who asked, "Is this okay?" Even as they moved together toward something neither could stop. When she came apart in his arms, Kevin followed moments later, her name on his lips. They collapsed together, sweat-slicked and breathing hard, Christine's head on his chest as his heart thundered against her ear. Okay? Kevin's hand stroked through her hair. Better than okay. Christine pressed a kiss over his heart. Thank you. For what? For making me feel like myself again. She propped herself up on his chest, looking down at him. For giving me this choice, for being exactly who you are. Kevin's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. I'm falling for you, Christine. I know it's fast and maybe crazy, but I can't pretend otherwise. Her breath caught. Kevin, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Whatever this is between us, it's not just physical for me. Christine kissed him softly. It's not just physical for me either. I don't know what that means yet, but I want to find out. That's enough. He pulled her down for another kiss. That's more than enough. They fell asleep, tangled together, Christine feeling safe in Kevin's arms in a way she'd never felt with Marcus. This was what partnership felt like, what respect felt like, what choosing each other freely and fully felt like. And for the first time in 5 years, Christine let herself hope that maybe, just maybe, she could have this, could deserve this, could keep this. The next week passed in a haze of new normal. Christine moved from the guest room to Kevin's bedroom without discussion, their relationship shifting naturally into something deeper. She started working from his home office, taking meetings with her firm about extending her leave, planning her return to work on her own timeline. Kevin adjusted his schedule to be home more, working remotely when he could, always making sure Christine wasn't alone. His security team did regular sweeps of the building. Marcus was complying with the restraining order according to police reports, staying away and making no contact. Everything seemed to be falling into place, which was why Christine should have known something would go wrong. It happened on a Tuesday evening. Kevin had gone to the office for a meeting that couldn't be avoided, and Christine was alone in the penthouse. She'd spent the afternoon on the phone with her parents in Atlanta, finally telling them everything. Her mother had cried, her father had threatened to drive up and handle Marcus personally, and they'd both made her promise to come visit soon with Kevin, who they were eager to meet. Christine was making tea in the kitchen when the building's fire alarm went off. Her heart immediately started racing, but she told herself it was just a drill. She grabbed her phone and purse, heading for the stairwell like Kevin had shown her during his safety tour. The stairwell was already filling with other residents, and Christine joined the orderly flow downward. She was on the 15th floor when she saw him. Marcus. Coming up the stairs against the flow of people, his eyes scanning the crowd until they locked on her, Christine's blood turned to ice. The restraining order required him to stay 500 feet away. There was no legitimate reason for him to be in Kevin's building, let alone climbing the stairs toward her during a fire alarm. Christine! He pushed through people trying to get past him. Christine, please, I just need to talk to you. People were staring now. An older woman near Christine looked concerned. Do you know him, dear? He's my ex. There's a restraining order. Christine's voice came out shaky. He's not supposed to be here. The woman immediately positioned herself between Christine and Marcus, and Christine took the opportunity to start moving faster down the stairs. But Marcus was coming up, and they were heading toward each other in the narrow stairwell. Christine's fingers were shaking as she pulled out her phone and called Kevin. It went to voicemail immediately. Of course, he was in his meeting. She tried again, then called 911. 911, what's your emergency? My ex-boyfriend is violating a restraining order. He's in my building following me during a fire alarm. Christine gave the address, her location, talking fast as Marcus got closer. Officers are being dispatched, the operator said. Stay on the line with me. But Marcus had reached her floor. Christine, please, I just want to apologize. You wouldn't take my calls. Because there's a restraining order. Christine was backing down the stairs now, keeping space between them while other residents streamed around them with alarmed looks. You're not supposed to be within 500 feet of me. I know, but that's ridiculous. We were together 5 years. Don't I deserve a chance to explain? He was using his reasonable voice, the one that had convinced her so many times that she was overreacting, that things weren't as bad as she thought. But Christine had learned. She'd grown, and she wasn't falling for it anymore. No, she said clearly. You don't deserve anything from me. Leave now, or the police will arrest you. Something dark flashed across Marcus's face. Of course, run to your billionaire boyfriend the second things get hard. That's who you really are, isn't it? Gold digging, back away from her, now! Kevin's voice came from below them on the stairs, and Christine nearly sobbed with relief. He must have gotten her call, must have left his meeting and driven like hell to get here. He was taking the stairs 2 at a time, and when he reached Christine, he positioned himself between her and Marcus without hesitation. This is a private conversation, Marcus said, but there was fear in his eyes now. Kevin was larger, clearly furious, and had several residents watching with phone cameras recording. This is a violation of a restraining order. Kevin's voice was steel. And you're going to wait right here for the police to arrive and arrest you. You can't tell me what to do. Actually, I can. This is my building. I own it, and you're trespassing in addition to violating a court order. Kevin's smile was sharp. I suggest you stay put unless you want to add resisting arrest to your charges. Sirens wailed outside, growing closer. Marcus looked between Kevin and Christine, and she saw the exact moment he realized he'd made a massive mistake. The fire alarm turned out to be false. No fire, but the building had been evacuated anyway, which meant dozens of witnesses to his violation, dozens of people recording on their phones. This isn't over, Marcus said to Christine, but it sounded hollow now, desperate. Yes, it is. Kevin's hand found Christine's, solid and reassuring. It's been over. Police arrived moments later, and Marcus was arrested on the spot. Christine gave her statement while Kevin kept his arm around her waist, anchoring her. Residents were allowed back into the building, and Kevin's security team appeared to escort them back to the penthouse. Once inside, Christine's legs gave out. Kevin caught her, guiding her to the couch and wrapping her in his arms. I've got you, he murmured. You're safe. He can't hurt you now. He was in your building. How did he get in? I don't know yet, but I will. Kevin's jaw was tight. And whoever let him in is fired. They sat like that for a long time, Christine processing the adrenaline crash while Kevin made phone calls to his security team, to Tracy, to the police. The restraining order violation was serious. Marcus would likely face jail time now. When Kevin finally put his phone down, he turned to Christine with an intensity that took her breath away. Move in with me, officially. Not just staying here temporarily. Actually make this your home. Christine blinked. Kevin, I know it's fast. I know you want to prove you can stand on your own. But Christine, having you here these past weeks, this place finally feels like home again. Not because I'm taking care of you, but because we're taking care of each other. His hand cupped her face. Let this be our home. Equal partners. What do you say? Christine thought about her empty apartment that still smelled like Marcus's cologne, thought about the difference between being controlled and being cherished, thought about the man in front of her who'd given her safety and space and the freedom to choose in equal measure. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll move in with you. Kevin kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Christine kissed him back with everything she had. Hen they finally broke apart, both smiling. Christine felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not just safe, not just protected. Free. 6 months later. Christine stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of what she now thought of as their penthouse, watching the city lights sparkle in the darkness. Behind her, she could hear Kevin moving around the kitchen, humming something tuneless as he finished plating dinner. It had been 6 months since that night in the stairwell. Marcus had pled guilty to violating the restraining order and assault charges, earning him 18 months in jail and mandatory counseling. Tracy had been brilliant, and Christine had finally felt something close to closure watching him be led away in handcuffs. The month since had been a revelation. Christine had returned to work, thrown herself into cases with renewed passion. She'd made partner again at a different firm, one that valued her and didn't question her trauma leave. She'd reconnected with old friends, built new support systems, started going to therapy weekly, and through it all, Kevin had been there, not controlling or hovering, but supporting, celebrating her victories, holding her through the nightmares that still came occasionally, reminding her every single day that she was loved and valued and safe. They'd fallen into an easy partnership, shared cooking duties and household responsibilities, made decisions together about everything from furniture to vacation plans, fought occasionally. Christine's relearning of healthy conflict had been a process, but always with respect and resolution. Kevin had introduced her to his goddaughter Emma, who adored Christine and had taken to calling her Aunt Christine within weeks. Christine's parents had visited twice, her father grilling Kevin extensively before declaring him acceptable with a twinkle in his eye that suggested he approved far more than that. Life wasn't perfect. Christine still had moments of fear when a car would backfire and she'd think Marcus had found her. Still woke sometimes from nightmares where she was back in that courtroom, unable to speak. Still struggled with trusting her own judgment after years of having it undermined. But she was healing, growing, becoming herself again in ways she hadn't thought possible. "Dinner's ready," Kevin called from the kitchen. Christine turned from the window and found him standing in the doorway, 2 plates in hand, wearing the ridiculous Kiss the Cook apron Emma had given him for his birthday. He looked relaxed and happy, so different from the controlled, grieving man who'd first stopped his car to help a bleeding stranger 6 months ago. They'd saved each other, Christine realized. He'd needed to protect someone after losing Caroline. She'd needed to be protected by someone who respected her autonomy, and somehow, in the process, they'd built something real. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily now after months of practice. Kevin's smile was radiant. "I love you too. Now come eat before your pasta gets cold." They ate at the dining table, talking about their days, her latest case victory, his new product launch, normal, domestic, wonderful. After dinner they moved to the terrace, Christine wrapped in Kevin's arms as they watched the city below. "I have something for you," Kevin said after a while. Christine pulled back to look at him. "It's not my birthday." "I know." He looked nervous in a way she rarely saw him. "But we've been talking about the future lately, and I thought maybe—" He trailed off, then laughed at himself. "I'm supposed to be good at presentations." "Kevin." Christine took his hand. "Whatever it is, just say it." He took a deep breath. "Move your stuff from the guest closet into mine. Officially combine everything. I'm not proposing. I know we agreed to take that step when you're ready. But I want you to know this is permanent for me, that I'm all in on us building a life together." Tears pricked Christine's eyes. Kevin always knew exactly what she needed. Not a proposal that might feel like pressure, but a tangible commitment that respected her timeline while making his intentions clear. "My stuff's already mostly in your closet," she said with a watery laugh. "I know, but I wanted to make it official. No more guest room safety net, just us, building something together." He pulled her close. "What do you say?" Christine kissed him instead of answering, pouring all her love and gratitude and hope into it. When she finally pulled back, she was smiling through tears. "I say yes. To all of it. To building a life with you. To being all in," she rested her forehead against his. "To being free and safe and loved, all at the same time. Always," Kevin promised. You'll always be all of those things with me." They stood on the terrace as the city lights glittered around them, two people who'd found each other in the darkness and built something bright. Christine thought about the woman who'd stumbled bleeding down a dark road 6 months ago, terrified and broken and convinced she'd never feel safe again. That woman had survived, had fought, had chosen to accept help and to heal and to love again. And now, in Kevin's arms, with their whole future stretching ahead of them, Christine finally understood what she'd told that judge all those months ago. She wasn't overreacting. She was reclaiming her life,